The great crystal dome of the Galactic Council stretched high above the assembled delegates, its walls shimmering with colors that had no names in most languages. 47 different species sat in carefully arranged sections, each group representing civilizations that had mastered space travel thousands of years before Earth's sun was even born. High Chancellor Vexithari floated above them all, his 6 arms moving gracefully as he controlled the meeting's flow. His species, the Dominion, had ruled the galaxy's central systems for over 10 millennia. Today felt like any other routine gathering: trade disputes, territory claims, and the endless paperwork of managing a galaxy-spanning government. Next, item on our agenda, Vexithari announced, his voice carried by translation devices to every corner of the dome. Signals detected from the outer rim territories. A tall, crystalline figure rose from the Zephyrian section. Commander Zilmoth's body caught the dome's light and scattered it in rainbow patterns across the floor. 3 months ago, our deep space monitors picked up transmissions from an unexplored system in Sector 7 Alpha, he reported. Basic mathematical sequences, primitive radio waves, standard pre-contact civilization markers. Several delegates shifted in their seats with boredom. Such discoveries happened almost monthly. The galaxy was full of young species just learning to reach beyond their homeworlds. War Marshal Thekvar of the hegemony leaned forward, his massive form casting shadows over nearby delegates. "Resource potential?" he asked in his booming voice. "Minimal," Zilmoth replied. "Single star system, only one inhabited world. They appear to be using basic chemical rockets and early nuclear technology. Nothing of value." A wave of dismissive murmurs swept through the assembly. The collective's representative, a being of pure energy contained in a glowing sphere, pulsed, with what might have been amusement. "Another dead-end species," it said through its mechanical voice box. "Most likely they will destroy themselves within a few centuries, as is typical." From the back of the chamber, an ancient voice cracked through the air. "The location is interesting." All heads turned toward the archive section, where Sage Mordan sat hunched over data tablets that were older than some civilizations. His species had been the galaxy's record keepers for over 20,000 years, and his memory was legendary even among his people. "Explain," Vexithari commanded, though his tone suggested he was already losing interest. Mordan's fingers moved across his ancient tablets, calling up records that most beings had forgotten existed. "That sector appears in our oldest files. References to a mythical warrior species. They called themselves humans." The word fell into the chamber like a stone into still water. For a moment, complete silence reigned. Then War Marshal Thekvar began to laugh. It started as a low rumble but grew until his massive frame shook with mirth. "More myths and legends, old keeper. Every failed civilization claims they were defeated by unstoppable warriors. It makes their destruction seem less shameful." Other delegates joined in the laughter. The ethereal collective pulsed brighter with what passed for amusement among their kind. Even some of the younger Zephyrians chuckled, their crystal bodies chiming like bells. But Mordan did not smile. His ancient eyes remained fixed on his tablets. "These references appear across multiple extinct cultures," he said quietly. "Civilizations that had no contact with each other, separated by thousands of light years and millions of years. Yet they all speak of the same beings. Warriors who never surrendered, who fought even when facing certain extinction." "Fairy tales," scoffed the Vorthan Empire's delegate, her voice dripping with disdain. "Stories to frighten children or explain military failures. We have heard such nonsense before." "The descriptions are remarkably consistent," Mordan continued, ignoring the interruption. "Bipedal creatures with incredible endurance. They spoke of beings who would fight impossible battles, who treated near extinction as merely another challenge to overcome. Some records describe them as the galaxy's immune system, appearing whenever an unstoppable threat emerged." War Marshal Thekvar's laughter died away. "Even if such beings existed, old one, they are clearly extinct. Your precious archives are full of dead civilizations and their wild stories." "Perhaps," Mordan said softly. "But the timing is curious. These signals come from the exact region where the oldest references place their homeworld. High Chancellor, Vexathari raised one of his 6 hands, calling for order, as murmurs spread through the chamber. Enough speculation about ancient myths, he declared. We deal with reality, not bedtime stories. Commander Zilmoth, mark the system for routine survey in 50 standard cycles. If they survive their current technological phase, we will make contact according to standard protocols. And if they prove troublesome, asked the Hegemony's War Marshal. Then we will deal with them as we always do, Vexathari replied with casual confidence. One way or another, all species eventually learn their place in the galactic order. The chamber fell silent as delegates prepared to move on to the next item. But in the archive section, Sage Mordan continued reading his ancient tablets, his expression troubled. The old records were very specific about one thing. When the mythical humans appeared, everything changed. As the council moved on to discuss trade regulations, none of them noticed the small monitoring probe that had been silently observing their meeting. None of them realized that their casual dismissal of humanity had already been transmitted across the galaxy. The myth was about to become reality. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Council's dismissive meeting, and the Zephyrian exploration. Vessel Shard of Truth glided silently through the darkness toward the mysterious system. Captain Velthara stood on her ship's bridge, watching the stars grow brighter as they approached their destination. Her crew of 12 moved efficiently around the crystal control panels, their bodies creating soft chiming sounds as they worked. This was routine for them. They had made first contact with dozens of primitive species over the centuries. The pattern was always the same: initial fear from the natives, followed by worship, then eventual submission to galactic authority. Approaching the outer system now, Captain, reported her navigation officer. Sensors are picking up the expected radio transmissions. Velthara nodded, settling into her command chair. Standard approach. Let them detect us gradually. We don't want to cause panic with a sudden appearance. But something was wrong. As they moved deeper into the system, the sensor readings became increasingly confusing. Instead of a few primitive satellites, the displays showed extensive orbital infrastructure. Space stations dotted the area around the third planet, and sleek vessels moved between them with purpose. Captain, her sensor operator called out, confusion clear in his crystalline voice. These readings don't match our intelligence. Reports. This civilization is far more advanced than expected. Velthara studied the displays with growing concern. The ships moving around the planet were clearly designed for space travel, not the crude chemical rockets they had anticipated. The technology signatures suggested engine types that shouldn't exist for a species at this development level. Are we in the correct system, she asked. Confirmed, Captain. This is definitely Sector 7 Alpha, the source of the primitive transmissions. Before Velthara could respond, her communications officer's voice cut through the bridge chatter. Captain, we're being hailed. Impossible, she said automatically. They shouldn't even know we're here. Signal is strong and clear, Captain. They're using our standard galactic communication frequencies. Velthara felt a chill run through her crystalline form. Only council member species knew those frequencies. Put it through. The main viewing screen activated, and Velthara found herself looking at a being she had never seen before. The creature was bipedal, with pale skin and dark hair. Its eyes were sharp and intelligent, showing no trace of the fear or confusion she expected from a first contact situation. Greetings, the being said in perfect galactic standard language. This is Captain Lee Tae-ho of the United Earth ship Harmony. Welcome to our system. We've been waiting for you. Velthara stared at the screen in shock. The creature's calm confidence was unlike anything she had encountered in centuries of exploration. Most species either fled in terror or prostrated themselves when first meeting galactic representatives. I am Captain Velthara of the Galactic Council Exploratory Fleet, she managed to say. Your species has been selected for evaluation and integration into galactic society. You must prepare for standard submission protocols. The human, for that's what this creature must be, tilted his head slightly. Submission protocols, while he repeated. I'm sorry, but we don't submit to anyone. However, we'd be very interested in meeting as equals. Would you like to visit Earth? We have many questions about your technology and culture. The Zephyrian crew exchanged stunned glances. No species had ever refused council protocols. The very concept seemed impossible. You don't understand, Velthara said, trying to regain control of the situation. The Galactic Council determines every species' place in galactic civilization. Compliance isn't optional. It's mandatory. Captain Lee smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both friendly and determined. We appreciate the offer, Captain Velthara, but we prefer to determine our own place in the universe. We've been independent for our entire history, and we're not about to change that now. This is unprecedented, Velthara whispered to her first officer. What do we do? Before she could think of an appropriate response, the human continued speaking. We've been monitoring your approach for the past 3 days. Your ship's design is fascinating. We'd love to learn more about crystal-based technology. In return, we could show you some of our recent developments. We've made some interesting breakthroughs in faster-than-light travel. That's impossible, Velthara said. Your species shouldn't have FTL capability for at least another 1,000 years. Well, Lee said with another smile, we've always been faster learners than most people expect. How about that visit? We have excellent coffee and our scientists are eager to meet you. Velthara felt completely out of her depth. Every protocol she knew demanded that she establish council authority immediately, but this human seemed completely unimpressed by her ship's advanced technology. He was treating her like an equal, as if his primitive species had the right to negotiate. Captain, her communications officer reported quietly, I'm detecting at least 30 human vessels in the system. Their energy signatures suggest they're armed. Are they threatening us? Velthara asked. No, Captain. They're maintaining respectful distances, but they're clearly watching. On the screen, Captain Lee seemed to be waiting patiently for her response. So, Captain Velthara, what do you say? Ready to make some new friends? For the first time in her long career, Velthara didn't know what to say. These humans were supposed to be primitive, but they acted like they belonged among the stars. They were supposed to be afraid, but they seemed genuinely excited about first contact. Most troubling of all, they were supposed to submit. But everything about their behavior suggested they had no intention of bowing to anyone. The myths were starting to seem less mythical. The news of humanity's refusal to follow council protocols spread through galactic communication networks faster than light itself. Within 3 days, emergency meetings were called in every major system. Never in recorded history had a newly discovered species simply said no to the Galactic Council. High Evaluator Kexmiran received his orders directly from the council chambers. His mission was simple: travel to this human homeworld, assess their true capabilities, and determine the appropriate level of force needed to bring them into compliance. His assessment fleet consisted of 12 ships, carrying military observers, technology specialists, and enough firepower to pacify most rebellious worlds. As the fleet approached Earth, Kexmiran studied the reports from Captain Velthara with growing confusion. The humans had not only refused submission but had somehow reverse-engineered Zephyrian crystal technology from simple sensor scans during their brief contact. No species had ever accomplished such a feat. Evaluator, his intelligence officer, reported, "We're receiving another communication from the humans." The main screen activated to show a human female with short black hair and bright, curious eyes. "Hello. I'm Dr. Kim So-young, Earth's lead xenotechnology specialist. We're so excited to meet you. We've prepared several presentations about our recent discoveries." Kexmiran stared at the screen. The human seemed genuinely happy to see them, showing no fear of his massive fleet. "This is High Evaluator Kexmiran of the Galactic Council. You will submit to immediate evaluation protocols." "Oh, evaluation sounds wonderful," Dr. Kim replied enthusiastically. "We love tests. We've prepared some questions for you too. Your crystal matrices could be 12% more efficient with proper harmonic resonance adjustments. We'd love to show you our improvements." The evaluator's three eyes blinked in sequence. These humans had improved Zephyrian technology in just 6 months? That was impossible. The crystal technology was thousands of years old and had been perfected by one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. You will land at the designated coordinates and await processing, Kexmiran commanded. Of course. We've prepared a wonderful reception. Fair warning, though. Our gravity is a bit heavy and our atmosphere has more oxygen than most species prefer. We've set up environmental suits for your comfort. The human cut the communication, leaving Kexmiran staring at a blank screen. Not only had they failed to show proper respect, but they were offering him environmental protection, as if he were their guest, rather than their judge. The landing proceeded without incident, though Kexmiran noted with concern that human military vessels maintained a respectful but watchful distance. When his shuttle touched down at the designated facility, he was greeted by a delegation of humans who seemed more excited than intimidated. Dr. Kim led him through laboratories filled with technology that shouldn't exist. She chattered constantly about their recent breakthroughs, showing him improvements to council designs that his own scientists had considered impossible. The key was understanding that your crystalline matrices vibrate at specific frequencies, she explained, handling a modified Zephyrian power cell. By adjusting the harmonic resonance, we increased energy output significantly. Of course, we're just beginners compared to your people. We'd love to learn more. Kexmiran's military observers were having their own disturbing experiences. Commander Park Min-ho, a human military officer, gave them a tour of Earth's defense systems with casual friendliness. These are our standard orbital platforms, Park explained, pointing to weapons arrays that seemed designed for space combat. Nothing too fancy, but they get the job done. Your species develops space weapons very quickly, observed war analyst Thekmanor. Well, we've always been good at fighting, Park replied with a smile. Want to see our training exercises? We're practicing some new tactics. The alien observers watched human military units conduct training scenarios that made their own warriors uncomfortable. Where most galactic species practiced defensive formations and strategic withdrawals, humans rehearsed desperate last stands and sacrificial attacks. This exercise simulates total orbital bombardment of your position, noted one observer. Your forces have no chance of survival. Right, agreed Colonel Yunhana, the human training commander. That's when things get interesting. See, most species give up when facing impossible odds. We've found that's usually when the real opportunities appear. You train for unwinnable scenarios? Especially unwinnable scenarios, Yoon replied. Victory is easy when you have advantages. The hard part is winning when everything's against you. That's where we do our best work. The most disturbing part of the assessment came when the humans casually discussed their own history. Captain Jiang Minqi spoke about something called world wars, as if they were normal events. We had 2 major global conflicts in the 20th century, he explained to horrified alien observers. Millions died. Entire cities were destroyed. Really brought us together as a species, though. Taught us what we were capable of. Your species survived multiple extinction-level conflicts? Asked Kexmiran. Oh, those weren't extinction-level, Jiang replied cheerfully. We've survived actual extinction events too. Volcanic eruptions, ice ages, plagues that killed most of our population. We always bounce back stronger. Most species would have been destroyed by a single such event. Really? Huh. We just figured everyone dealt with stuff like that. Makes you tougher, you know? Kexmiran spent 3 days on Earth, and each day brought new impossibilities. These humans treated near extinctions as learning experiences. They had improved alien technology within months of first seeing it. Their military trained specifically for hopeless situations, and their scientists approached every problem with enthusiasm rather than proper caution. Most troubling of all, they showed no fear of the Galactic Council's power. They treated the evaluation as an interesting cultural exchange rather than a judgment that would determine their species' fate. As Kexmiran prepared his report, he realized the ancient myths might not have been myths at all. The emergency klaxons echoed through the crystal halls of the Galactic Council as delegates rushed to their seats in panic. High Chancellor Vexathari's 6 arms trembled as he called the session to order, his usual calm shattered by the reports flooding in from the outer rim. "The impossible has happened," he announced, his voice carrying across the stunned assembly. "Long-range sensors have confirmed what we hoped never to see again. The Devourers have returned." A wave of terror swept through the chamber. Even the youngest delegates knew the stories. An ancient machine intelligence that had swept through the galaxy millions of years ago, consuming entire star systems before mysteriously vanishing into deep space. Civilizations far older and more advanced than any current council member had fallen before them like wheat before a harvester. War Marshal Thekvar stood, his massive frame casting shadows across nearby seats. "All border worlds must begin immediate evacuation. We implement Protocol Omega, full strategic withdrawal to core systems. Every ship, every station, everything of value must be pulled back." "How much time do we have?" asked the collective's representative, its energy form pulsing with barely controlled fear. "Based on their current speed, perhaps 6 months before they reach inhabited systems," replied the marshal. "Less if they accelerate as they did in the ancient records." Delegate after delegate stood to voice desperate strategies. The ethereal collective suggested hiding in distant galaxies until the threat passed. The Vorthon Empire proposed offering tribute, entire star systems if necessary. The Zephyrians wondered if negotiation might be possible. "The archives are clear," Sage Mordan said from his corner, his ancient voice heavy with despair. "The Devourers don't negotiate. They don't accept tribute. They simply consume everything in their path. Our ancestors tried every strategy imaginable. Nothing worked." "There must be something," insisted a young delegate from the Rim Coalition. "Some weakness, some flaw in their design." "If there was, don't you think our predecessors would have found it?" Thekvar snapped. "Civilizations with millions of years of experience, technology we can barely comprehend, they all fell. The only survivors were those who ran far enough, fast enough." From the back of the chamber, a calm voice cut through the panic. "What exactly are their capabilities?" Every head turned toward the human delegation. Ambassador Choi Hyun-woo sat calmly in his seat, apparently unaffected by the terror gripping everyone else. His question was asked with the same casual interest he might show when discussing the weather. "You cannot be serious," Vexathari gasped. "Your species has existed for barely a moment in galactic terms. The Devourers destroyed civilizations that were ancient when your star was young." "That doesn't answer my question," Choi replied politely. "What are their capabilities? How do they function? What's their technology base?" War Marshal Thekvar activated the chamber's holographic display, showing grainy images from ancient archives. Massive, dark shapes moved across star fields, leaving empty space where entire systems had been. "Self-replicating machine intelligence," he explained reluctantly. "They consume matter to build more of themselves. No known weapons can penetrate their hulls. They adapt to any attack within minutes. They move faster than our best ships and strike without warning." "Interesting," said another human voice. General Song Woo-jin had quietly entered the chamber during the chaos. "Adaptable systems usually have processing limitations. How fast do they adapt?" "What does it matter?" Thekvar demanded. "They've never been defeated." "Never been defeated yet," Song corrected calmly. "Everything can be defeated if you understand how it works. We'll need all available data. Tactical reports, energy signatures, behavioral patterns. Everything your archives contain." The chamber fell silent. Several delegates stared at the humans as if they had declared their intention to breathe vacuum. "You're talking about fighting them," whispered the collective's representative. "Of course," Song replied. "What else would we do?" "Run," Vexathari said immediately. "Hide. Survive. That's what rational species do when faced with extinction. Running's not really our style," admitted Ambassador Choi. "We tried that approach once with something called the Black Death. Lost a third of our population, but we learned some valuable lessons about fighting impossible odds." "This is madness," declared the Vorthon delegate. "Your species has no experience with galactic-level threats. You don't understand what you're facing." General Song smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both friendly and terrifying. We face plenty of extinction events, asteroids, ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, global wars, plagues. The trick is not giving up when things look hopeless. The Devourers aren't a natural disaster, Thekvar protested. They're an intelligent, adaptive force that has destroyed everything they've encountered. Then they haven't encountered us. Yet, Song replied simply. From his position at the chamber's center, Sage Mordan looked up from his ancient tablets with something that might have been hope. The old records mention one thing the Devourers never faced, he said quietly. The archives speak of a mythical warrior species that appeared whenever impossible threats emerged. They called them the galaxy's immune system. More myths, Vexathari said, though his voice lacked conviction. Maybe, Mordan agreed. But those myths always appeared in the same sector where these humans originated. General Song stood to address the chamber. We'll need staging areas, supply lines, and coordination with any species willing to fight. Most importantly, we need that data. Every scrap of information about Devourer technology and tactics. This is suicide, Thekvar said. Maybe, Song agreed cheerfully, but it beats sitting around waiting to be eaten. Besides, someone has to try. Might as well be us. As chaos erupted in the chamber again, one thing became clear. The humans weren't running. For the first time in galactic history, someone was planning to fight the unfightable. The myths were about to be tested. The Devourer fleet moved through space like a plague of metal locusts, leaving empty darkness where star systems had once shone. Defense platforms that had protected civilizations for millennia vanished without a trace. Entire colonies went silent, their final transmissions cut off mid-sentence. The ancient terror had returned, and it was exactly as unstoppable as the legends claimed. At the Kepler mining colony, humanity's outermost settlement, administrator, Li Jianwu watched the approach of certain death through his station's observation deck. Unlike other species, the humans had not evacuated. Instead, they had spent 3 months turning every piece of mining equipment into a weapon. Sir, they'll be here in 6 hours, reported his communications officer. Good, Jinwu replied calmly. Send the final data burst to Earth Command. Make sure they get everything we've learned. The first Devourer scouts appeared at the edge of the system like dark shadows against the stars. They moved with mechanical precision, scanning for resources and resistance. What they found confused their ancient programming. Instead of fleeing, civilians or desperate defensive positions, they encountered mining drones that had been converted into suicide bombers. Asteroid mining platforms opened fire with industrial lasers that had been modified far beyond their original specifications. Even the colony's garbage haulers had been fitted with nuclear warheads. The battle was brief and brutal. The Devourers adapted quickly to each human tactic, but the humans kept changing their approach. When conventional weapons failed, they used ramming attacks. When their ships were destroyed, the wreckage itself became weapons, programmed to explode when the machines tried to salvage them. Kepler colony died, but it died loudly. Every weapon fired, every explosion, every desperate tactic was recorded and transmitted back to human space. The Devourers had won, but they had revealed something crucial. They were not truly invincible. They could be hurt, and more importantly, they could be surprised. Admiral Lim Seo-jin stood on the bridge of the United Earthship Defiance, studying the data from Kepler with grim satisfaction. Around him, the largest human fleet ever assembled waited for orders. Ships from every Earth colony, every orbital station, every military base had gathered for what everyone knew might be humanity's final battle. Analysis complete, Admiral, reported his tactical officer. The Devourers adapt to threats, but there's a processing delay. Approximately 47 seconds between encountering a new tactic and developing a countermeasure. 47 seconds. Sojin mused. Long enough to hurt them if we're creative. Captain Jang Min-ki of the escort carrier Soul's Pride joined the discussion via hologram. What's the plan, sir? Chaos, Seo-jin replied simply. Pure, beautiful chaos. These machines optimize for predictable responses. We're going to give them something they've never seen before. Humans who don't know when to quit. The human fleet met the Devourer Armada at the Titan Nebula, a swirling mass of gas and debris that provided perfect cover for unconventional tactics. The aliens who had been monitoring the situation from safe distances expected to witness humanity's quick destruction. Instead, they saw something that defied every principle of galactic warfare. The humans didn't fight like a civilized species. They used ramming attacks, suicide runs, and weapons that seemed designed to cause maximum damage even in defeat. When their main guns were destroyed, they used mining equipment. When their ships were crippled, they set them to self-destruct and rammed them into Devourer vessels. Most shocking of all, the humans seemed to learn faster than the machines could adapt. Each engagement revealed new weaknesses in Devourer technology, which were immediately transmitted to other human ships. The fleet began to function like a single organism, sharing information and tactics in real time. The Devourers found themselves facing opponents who treated impossible odds as normal operating conditions. Human captains rammed critical systems knowing it meant certain death. Ground forces continued fighting in the wreckage of destroyed ships, using improvised weapons and guerrilla tactics that the machine's programming couldn't process. Captain Oh Yun-ho of the Soul's Pride watched his ship's hull breach as Devourer cutting beams tore through the armor. His crew was dead, his weapons were gone, but his fusion reactor was still intact. "This is Captain O to all ships," he broadcast calmly. "I'm making a run at their command vessel. Tell my family I did my job." The Soul's Pride accelerated toward the massive Devourer mothership, its reactor set to critical overload. The machine intelligence tried to destroy the crippled vessel, but O had disabled all non-essential systems, making his ship nearly invisible to their sensors. The explosion tore through space like a newborn star. When the light faded, the Devourer mothership was breaking apart, its central processing core destroyed. Without their command unit, the remaining machines began to malfunction, their perfect coordination falling apart. The battle ended not with humanity's glorious victory, but with the quiet floating of debris in space. Both fleets had been largely destroyed, but only one side had accomplished its mission. As rescue ships moved through the wreckage, Admiral Lim Seo-jin sent a simple message to the Galactic Council. "Threat neutralized. Humans don't surrender." The emergency council session that followed was unlike any in galactic history. For the first time, delegates weren't discussing trade routes or territory disputes. They were trying to understand how a species barely past their technological infancy had accomplished what ancient civilizations could not. High Chancellor Vexathari addressed the human delegation with something approaching awe. The myths were true. Your species is the galaxy's immune system. Ambassador Choi Hyun-woo nodded simply. You called us a myth. Maybe that's what the galaxy needed. Something impossible enough to do the impossible. The Galactic Council formally recognized humanity not as subjects to be managed, but as protectors of galactic civilization. They were the species crazy enough to fight unwinnable wars, stubborn enough to face extinction with a smile, and creative enough to find victory in defeat. As the session ended, Sage Mordan closed his ancient tablets with satisfaction. The II legends had been proven true. When the galaxy faced its darkest hour, the mythical warriors had appeared exactly as foretold. The humans had arrived, and everything had changed.